Oh, there we go. Linda's gonna level it out there some. All right. We are wrapping up this book tonight. I know it's been like a forever because we only do it every other week, but yeah, I'm excited about it, and I like this chapter. I really do. Um, we're talking about partnering with fathers tonight, and you guys probably already know that I'm pretty passionate about both sexes being equal parts of the kingdom and equally valuable. And I think sometimes when you feel, or when you have been undervalued, or maybe valued in ways that weren't all the ways you should have been valued, you can tend to swing the pendulum too far the other way and devalue others as kind of try to prove your point. So I think that's what has happened with feminism in general, is that women weren't treated as equals, and then in retaliation we kind of swung the pendulum so far the other way that we actually didn't value men in many ways. And instead of equality, it kind of got to be about revenge. And I think it's just a tragic thing that's happened in our society. I think maybe that's leveling out some now, but I think for a while it just went crazy. And the whole point of God being creative and making differences is that we celebrate the differences, and we've got that going in everything nowadays, whether it's gender or race or culture or, even different denominations or anything. We tend to divide, and I think we do that out of insecurity and then sometimes out of retaliation instead of celebrating. So I really like this last chapter. I think it's a great way to wrap it up and acknowledge the partnership. And I would say that we've talked all through this series about this isn't just about being a biological mom. This is about being a spiritual mom. And so the same thing is true. It's not just about what is a biological dad's role. It's what is spiritual dad's, what is their role. And so just keep that in mind as we talk tonight. Sorry, I could just go all out of order because that's how I do things. But let me try to stay in some kind of order. Let me just get right into what she is clarifying as a father's role. And she has three things that she feels like are specific to being a spiritual dad. The first of those being that they call out identity. They call out our identity. And so you can see that as exampled by God the Father, and we know that he created and he named Adam, and then in turn, Adam turned around. He named the animals. He named his wife. I've heard Chris Valentin speak on this, and it's a really, really interesting, thought-provoking topic, that he talks about how when Adam named the animals, he doesn't believe that he just randomly pulled random syllables out of the air and was like, and I don't speak Hebrew, so I don't know what Hebrew is for lion or what Hebrew is for bear. I don't know any of that, so I'll have to use English. But he didn't just randomly go, bear. Okay, next, giraffe. But that he was actually, it meant something to him, and he was actually calling out their identity as he named them. Like, this is who you are. And I think for most people, when we name our children, I know we do it according to, I like that name, but hopefully you think about, what does that name mean? And you name your child something that has purpose and even if it's naming them a family name, you don't usually name your child after the crazy uncle in the family, or the insane aunt that no one could stand to be around. You don't go, I'm naming my girl that. You don't do that. You name them over after someone who has the character that you want your child to have, or you give them the name that means what you want your child to be named, and so and the character you want them to have. So fathers do that. We know that, especially as women, we know that because in general, whether we like it or not, in general, our fathers teach us who we are as women. They teach us what we're worth. They teach us how we should be treated. They teach us what we should look for, what we will put up with, and what we will not put up with. And our daddies, in general, do that. Now, you may have not had a biological dad that did that. Hopefully you have a spiritual dad or an adoptive type dad that did that with you. So, but, moms can tell you ever notice this? Moms can tell their kids over and over, this is who you are. This is what you're worth. This is who you are. This is what you're worth. This is who you are. This is what you're worth. And they kind of go, yeah, but so many times it's like, yeah, mom, yeah, mom, yeah, mom. Because they think that that's just what moms do. They don't really think you mean it so much as just like it's almost wishful thinking from you. And you're like, hello, but when a dad, when a mom calls their little girl princess, the little girl's like, yes. When a daddy does it, it's like, I am a princess, and you get to the point where you're the mom, you're like, would you please calm down that stuff? I can't get her to do anything, So daddies, innately, daddies give us our identity. And words from your mom, in the opposite sense, words from your mom obviously can hurt. They can do damage. But I can tell you from decades of counseling people that the negative words their fathers speak seem to have more impact almost. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. I would almost think that good on the girls has more impact and negative on the men has more impact. Do you find that to be true? As I'm sitting here when I think about it, because when we have girls who well, maybe it's both, but you have girls who don't know what they're worth, it's because their daddy hasn't taught them. So many times. Please understand, I am not telling you that if your kid does not have their biological dad there, that they can't know what they're worth, because they have a heavenly Father who tells them what they're worth all the time. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying God gave us a partnering role with him. And he gave us our children to steward and to raise in a godly way and to mirror how he does things, right? So dads have an incredible impact with that. And when a dad tells their child, this is who you are, you can do it. And maybe perhaps it's because for most men, they are men of fewer words than women. That's also a generality. So maybe it's partly because when a man says it, it happens more rarely, so it has more impact. I don't know. I think a lot of it is just a God-given thing. But dads call out the identity in their children. Genesis 2:19 is the verse about Adam and God, and says that God brought the animals to man to see what he would name them, and whatever the man called them, that was its name. So, and then 1 John 3:1 is an example of the Father setting this example first. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called the children of God. And that is what we are. So what is that song we sing? Yolanda leads it usually, that says, I am who he says I am. I am who he says I am. Those are weapons we fight with, right? I do. When I'm feeling insecure, or when I'm feeling afraid of a task ahead of me, or maybe I've had somebody, just rip on me, and I have to come back and say, okay, I want to own any place I'm wrong, but I have to come back to I am who he says I am. The other thing that does for me is it pulls me back into alignment to acting like who I am. It's very, very true. And I tell you, that's one of the main things I remember my dad ever saying to me when I was whatever age, that you start saying, Dad, everybody's doing it. And my dad would say, you're not everybody. Always, you're not everybody. And I knew, I'm not everybody. I'm not meant to be like everybody else. And that wasn't a bad thing. I knew that wasn't a bad thing. I knew that was baby, you're called higher than other people are. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be called higher, but they weren't in relationship with God yet. So he was just saying, that's not who you are. So, and I told you, we tell our kids when they leave the house, still sometimes when they're grown, remember who you are. Remember who you are. I do, thank you. I don't know if I have allergies or what my deal is, but I've been, thanks, downing the antihistamine lately, so it must be allergies. Okay, so identity. Identity is the first thing that fathers call out in their children. The second thing is that they celebrate the now. And we're gonna talk about the difference between celebrating the now and championing the future. But so if it helps you remember these things, they're all C's. Calls out their identity, celebrates the now, champions the future. So what does celebrating the now look like? Let me back up just a little bit, because she comes at this at the end, but I think I'm going to do it as we go. When she talks about calling out the identity, she would say the father's role is to call out the identity, and then the mother's role is kind of to be able to tell you what that looks like, how you get there. Like if Shannon calls his little girls princesses, then my job is to show them how to act like royalty. Now, he will do that some, but a mother usually has more time spent with her children nurturing, so you're kind of teaching them how that goes. If my husband, by example, is going to, if he says to my boys, and he has many times, you're a man of God, he's going to show them by example, but then I'm reinforcing that. I'm going into more detail with them on what does that look like? What does that look like? How do I train you in that? So it's not that the fathers, so much of this overlaps. It's not that the fathers only call out their identity and the mothers never do that. Of course we do. Of course we do. But, and it's not that the fathers never train. They do. But I think many times by nature of we have a nature to nurture. And so we tend to train more, And we're usually we are the more present in their early formative years. So we have that as well. So celebrating the now. So what does it look like to celebrate the now? This is what I was alluding to when I was asking Connie. I don't know of any person who does not want their father's approval. Even when they say they don't, I find that it's usually a defense mechanism. Like, I'm not going to get it, so I say I don't care. But really, you do. Every person wants their father's approval. And I think that is also, I know it can go to unhealthy places. I understand that. But I think in general, it is a God-given desire in us. It's a God-given desire in us when we know God, to please God. Actually, it's a God-given desire in us before we know God, because we know the right from wrong. And we can choose wrong But we want to be the good guy. You know how, the saying about we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intent? I think that's that thing right there. We want approval. We want to be the good guy. We want to be the noble one. We want to be the godly one. We don't always want the inconvenience of making the choices to be that, but we want that approval. And so a second job that a father has given to him by God is to celebrate his children. Now, we're not saying that we're going to celebrate rebellion or we're going to celebrate, foolish, or I don't even want to say foolish, because sometimes our kids are really trying and it's just foolish. And I don't think there's any place for criticism in that. I think in the middle of that, the celebration is still, hey, you tried. Hey, at least you put yourself out there, But to celebrate the now, to be present and to celebrate who they are now. Sometimes I've encountered fathers who feel like being a man means that they only deal with man stuff. I only deal with work. I only deal with, important things, important decisions. Playing with toddlers is not a man's job. Watching flag football is not a man's job. I've got to be at work. That idea, and I will tell you, it's honestly immensely damaging to their children. Because fathers need to celebrate the now. Like, I'm here now. I know that none of us can be at everything we'd like to be at or spend the kind of time maybe that we would like to. We do have adult things that we have to take care of, but it's hugely important for fathers to be able to celebrate the now. Like, stop long enough to cheer the kid on his report card. Stop long enough to cheer the kid on just the homework, the picture, the listen to the story, listen to the stupid joke. Go sit through T-ball, which is the most boring hour you'll ever spend in your life. And I've done it over and over and over, and so has Shannon. But go sit through T-ball, and don't sit on your phone. Like, cheer every kid on that gets up there, act like it's the World Series. And so, obviously, we partner with that. I think for a lot of us, the way we partner is reminding them, there's a game tonight. Hey, psst, I tease Shannon because you guys know Shannon is very one-tracked, and we call our kids the roar. So there's a whole lot of tracks going on in our house all the time when the kids were growing up. And in the van, we almost always had a van, and in the van there would be stuff flying across the van, and drinks spilling, and French fries getting crammed in seats, and he's driving, so he's not real good at differentiating the sound when a kid somewhere in the back says, "Hey, Dad," blah, 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 blah. And I would just go, say what? What? Say good job. Half the time he didn't know he had no idea what he was answering to. None. Because his brain doesn't, he can't pinball with them. But and they kind of know that, and they laugh about it. But it, at least he would stop long enough to, and he'd listen to the stories, and he'd look at the things they built. And it didn't matter if, that he knew how to do whatever. He was so impressed. Like, we still have the very first truck that Caleb built for him out of wood and nails when he was like probably 4. And we still have it. And it's, it looks like what you would think. It looks like. You can tell it's a truck. So that's rather impressive. But, but you celebrate the, wow, son, that's awesome. And then you take it and you put it on your study shelf, which is where it was forever. It was in his office on his shelf forever. And you guys know this. You put up the pictures and you let them do their thing. And I don't know. That's yeah. If I could cheer parents on to anything, it would be to let your kids be them. Let them pick the picture, let them draw the picture, let them pick the colors, do you know what I mean? Let them be them. Don't let them be them. We limit our kids' creativity a lot, and we actually teach them that they need to be nervous about their work around us, because it may not get our approval if it's not just what they would want. And we don't realize we're doing it to them, but we make them nervous about getting our approval. So that's a whole different, probably very vague statement. But anyway, let your kids be kids, and let them have fun and celebrate the fun. I had a friend who used to, when her kids would come inside, she'd look at them and she'd go, "Oh, you're not dirty enough. Get back out there." Now, that probably just gave her more silence. But it let her kids knew, play hard. They could play and play and play, and they could get dirty, and they could be kids. And they knew that was totally okay. And I love that. I wish I had thought of that when my kids were little. Oh, you're not dirty enough. Get yourself back out there. But anyway, so just celebrating the now. Celebrate what they like. They don't have to like what you like. They don't have to do things the way you do it. I've mentioned this. You guys know, I have a degree in music. I was a vocal major. You don't know, I'm not fishing. I don't sing anymore. I yell now. I don't sing. But I used to be able to sing. I'm classically trained. That's what you have to be when you're a vocal major. Anyway, so I have two daughters with two very different voices. Very different voices. And Lydia's voice is super, super unique. Ever since she was tiny, she's had this little raspy voice. Even when she was like 2 and 3, she'd come in the morning because she was the early bird, and she'd stick her little face in my face at 4 in the morning and go, "Is it time to get up yet? Hey, Mom." And that was her whisper. And she just, Shannon and I talked about it. Like, do we push our kids to be in choir? Do we put them in vocal lessons? Do we, and I watch myself. Like, how much do I say to my kids? Do I say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You're not focusing right here. Focus right here, baby. No. I can see your chest moving. Breathe through your diaphragm. Nope. Okay. Nope. You got your vibrato's going a little crazy there. You're pushing it. It's making you go flat." You know what I mean? Do I do all that to my kids, or how do I measure that out to encourage my kids, but not make them feel like they can't ever do anything right for me? And Shannon and I decided very young with Lydia that we wouldn't push her to be in. I try to tell her ways not to hurt her voice, but we decided she's never going to sing classical music. It's not her style. It's not her desire. Her voice is way too unique for that. And so we decided early on, we're not putting her in voice lessons. We're not pushing her to be in choir or anything else. We'll teach her harmony. We'll teach her to be a musician, and that's it. And so for me, you'd have to understand my family background to understand why that was a radical decision, because all of us in my family, my sister doesn't, but she's very, very musical. I think all of her degrees are in English and higher education. I don't know what they're all in, but anyway, I'm sorry, my family's a little there. Anyway, but my brothers and I both we all have music degrees. Even with their other degrees, they have beyond that, they have music degrees. So for me, that was a radical decision. For me to say, I'm going to let her be her, and I'm not going to look at her and go, "You don't sing properly. We really got to get you in lessons." So I'm just saying, like, celebrate who your kids are, and I know I'm talking to a group of women, and then we're talking about partnering with fathers, but really encourage them. Celebrate who they are. Doesn't mean you can't encourage them and you can't challenge them and help them get better, but they don't need to be you. And for fathers, it's hard for fathers, I think, sometimes more than mothers. They don't need, your son doesn't have to do exactly what his dad does. He may, and he may want to, but he doesn't have to, because God's super creative. So be present and celebrate who they are. Now, let me find you. Sorry. I take my glasses off. I can't see a scripture to save my life. Romans 15:7 says, accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. It's a great verse. It's a great verse. And honestly, even beyond accepting, to celebrate each other. And you guys are familiar. I don't think she gives a reference, and I should have looked it up. I'm sure you guys can Google it super fast. But, here, Ephesians 6:4 and Colossians 3:21. They both talk about not exasperating your children. Fathers, not exasperating your children. Like just pushing them. Don't push your kids to the point where they're just going to give up. They just figure there's no point. No point. And I think that's true, again, whether it's biological or whether it's spiritual. You guys know this. Many of us in this room have kids old enough where you know that there's kind of a dance that you have to do between encouraging or wanting it more than they want it. And then the other side of that pendulum is pushing them so hard that they don't even want to hear it from you. Because again, they just believe they're never going to please you. So what's the point? And when you desperately want somebody's approval, it's just too painful to keep trying for it and not getting it. So you just give up. It's a survival mechanism. I can't take this pain anymore, so I'm going to quit. And I'm going to tell myself I don't want it. It's hard. I remember, I know where I was standing because I'm visual, but I was in the living room the other day and I was talking with Seth about some situation that we saw on, I don't know, it was on TV or whether it was, I don't know what it was. And I said, man, we just underestimate as parents how much ability we have to jack our kids up. I know our kids can get healed. I know that. But we love sometimes as adults, because we don't want to be inconvenienced, we love to say, oh, kids are resilient. Well, no, they're really not. They're survivors because they have to be, but I wouldn't say they're resilient, because when we say resilient, it's almost like we want to make them like they're marble or something and nothing phases them. And that's not true. It's not. They're children, for Pete's sake. They're children. Their brains aren't even fully formed to be able to grasp. They don't know that you hurt them because you got hurt. They don't know that. They just think you don't like them. Us. I'm not saying you understand. And so it's really important this isn't even in here, but it's super important as parents, as spiritual leaders, as friends, that we constantly ask the Lord, show me my stuff. Help me own my stuff. I want to be healthy. And sometimes it's embarrassing to realize, crud, I am like that. And I can say that from experience. But it's super important. And I think even just that step to be able to say, wow, I'm sorry. I was wrong and I did that because of this, and I'm really sorry. That's super healing to any kid from their parent. It's super healing because we can forgive our parents. We just have to, it really helps. You can forgive them without the apology, but it super helps to have the apology. It's very, very, very healing. Okay, any comments? I'm going on and on. I'm not asking. Questions or comments? We'll have some time at the end too. I know some people are worried about talking online, so we'll have some time at the end. So if you have something but you don't want to say it, just jot it down or something. Keep it in mind. I told you guys last week I'm going to do that as a concession. I'm kind of sad though, because if there's a question in this room, there are probably many people out there that have the same question, and so they don't get to hear it answered, and they don't get to hear you guys' insights, which I feel like you have really good insights, and they don't get to hear it if we don't do it online. But okay. All right. So I'm going to go on. And then the last thing that she says about a father's role, and it's not, these are just three main things. They're not completely enveloping. But it says championing the not yet. Let me find her definition. She clarifies. Here we go. One of the primary definitions of the verb champion is to support the cause of and defend. So to champion someone is to support their cause and defend. So it's actually like, I'm in this with you. I'm working with you. I'm working toward you. Now, we talked about in previous chapters with moms, we talked about how we can assist. How do we assist our sons and daughters? How do we assist them in coming into their destiny? And so this is the same idea, but fathers champion the future. Like fathers, if they're seeing their identity, they're seeing who they are, they're believing in what they see in them, and then they're championing that. They're defending that. That's a huge one. People need to know that their fathers are going to defend them. I mean, we have all the jokes about mamas and, mama bears, and you mess with me, you see me take my earring off, you better run, And that's all true, but there's something to be said about knowing that you have a father who is there to defend you. A father who is there to defend who you are. A father who is there to defend your passions and your callings and what you want to do with your life. Again, it goes along with the being accepted and being approved of. When someone can champion your cause, then it's like approval, on steroids, so to speak. It's like not only are you accepting it, like she talked a lot about here in this last chapter about accepting how people are. To me, it shouldn't be. Accepting shouldn't be I don't know if mediocre is the right word. It shouldn't be a mediocre term for me, but for whatever reason, it kind of is. Like, it's acceptable. To me, I know that's not how God means it when he says we're accepted, but in my mind, for me personally, I have to work at that one, because to me, acceptable is like, okay, it passes within what do they call the not boundaries, but like when you make, if you make clothing for a factory, there are variances, and as long as you get it within the variance, it's acceptable. Doesn't mean it's great. So I'm just telling you, I struggle with that, because in my head, that's the definition of acceptable that I have. But championing goes beyond just, I guess I picture acceptance as resolve, like, okay. And that's not how God means it, so I have to work on that. But God actually celebrates. And championing it's celebrating our kids' destinies. It's defending it. It's supporting it and saying, okay, what can I do to make this happen? How can I help you if you need to go to college? How can I help you go to college? If you want to work on cars, how can I go about getting you a good starter set of tools? If you want to play pro football, okay, and I know that sometimes for dads, it seems like maybe they're in the background or this or that, but, can they go out and throw the ball around? Do you know, I read a study one time, and I should have looked this up before I came, but I didn't even think of it till I was sitting here. But I read a study one time where they're having more and more difficulty finding, they don't have nearly the pool of good baseball players to choose from that they used to 50 years ago. You know why? Because dads don't go in the backyard and play catch with their kids anymore. I'm not saying all, but in general, before we had 80 million channels on our cable TV and Facebook, and everybody had a notebook in front of them, and everybody had a phone, you went out, and many times you went out and played catch before dinner. Or maybe you went out for a little bit after dinner if it was still summer, and you played baseball. And there's actually a study and that they are having a harder and harder time finding excellent baseball players because kids don't go out and throw the ball around with their dad. I don't know if there's a football study on that, but I would almost bet you there is. Other things, what are you learning? I mean, I'm telling you, I'm so grateful for my father-in-law because Shannon he's so good at so many things, and it's because his dad was. And his dad just took him out and, his dad was a diesel mechanic. So his dad's like, there's an old motor, go work on it. Go pull it all apart, put it all back together. And then his dad was in the shop working, so his dad would tell him, like, here's what, he'd go over and help him if he got stuck. There wasn't YouTube. He couldn't say, go pull a YouTube up. He spent time teaching and working him into that, Even as a spiritual dad, I can remember my dad was only alive for a couple of years after I got married because he died when I was 25. But so I guess Shannon probably met him. I got married when I was 23. He might have known him 3 years maybe before he died. But my dad knew that Shannon wanted to be a pastor. Shannon did not come from any kind of a background to be trained in that at all. And so my dad would just haul him along with him everywhere he went. If he was going to the hospital, he'd say, and this will tell you the culture I grew up in the time, but this was 30 years ago, go put a tie on, Shan, come on, we're gonna go to the hospital. And it's still true, if you show up in a suit and tie, you get more respect than if you show up in a polo. But they're not they wouldn't question you being a pastor now. Back then, they would be like, you're a pastor? What are you doing dressed like that? Especially in the Bible Belt. But he would just, and he would, Shannon still has a little, he doesn't use it much anymore, but boy, it was his lifeline when he first started pastoring. My dad gave him a set of 3 books, just little, smaller than my Bible, just little books, and one was for marriages and one was for funerals. I'm trying to think of what the other one was for. Anyway, just like services. And my dad would walk him through, like, here's what you do at a funeral. Because they don't teach you that in Bible college. They don't have time probably to teach you that in Bible college, but you need to know, like, what's the pastor do? People don't think of that while they're not in the situation, but you got to know, like, where does the family go before? Who brings the family in? Who waits? Who directs the family to stand down here? And who you don't know all those things. Weddings, people don't even know which side the bride and groom go on. Sorry if you don't know. That sounded so critical. Sorry. They don't know because they haven't done a wedding a year or 5 weddings a year for the last 30 years. And they have no idea. They don't know which side is which and whose and what order people come in. And they don't know why. Why do they come in a certain order? Because it's a matter of honor. That's why they come in this order. It's showing honor. It goes greater honor, greater honor, greater honor, bride. They don't know that. They don't think about it. And it's so, what? Yeah, that's why it is. That's why grandmothers come in first, then mothers. The honor goes up. As you go, the honor goes up. And the groom's side goes first and then the bride's, because the bride's always preferred, which I think is really sweet when you think about what Jesus does for us, right? And then the highlight of the whole wedding is the bride. So she's the last one to enter the room. It's really cool, actually. I love it. But people don't know that. They don't know that. And I know people can do things differently now because everybody does it differently. I think maybe part of why they do it differently is because they don't know why the tradition was set in the first place, because I really love the tradition. I think it's super sweet. But anyway, and so my father just, for the 3 years that he had him, and I used to tease Shannon when we were first married, Shannon was going to Bible school because he had gotten his associates in music, but it had no relevance to his Bible degree. So he had to go to school the whole time when we were first married, and he would drive 70 miles. He would commute. So one semester he'd do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the next semester he'd do Tuesday, Thursday. And we lived in a little rental right next to my dad's. My dad ran an advertising business because he didn't get paid to be a pastor. And so it was right next to our house. And I used to tease Shannon because Shannon would come home and he'd beeline it straight over to see my dad. And I was like, why don't you go see my dad before you come see me? And he goes, I like your dad. I was like, all right, dork, fine. But anyway, so, just doing everything you can. Everything, what does that look like? Can you help pay for college? Can you help get them what they need? Can you make connections for them? We talked about that with moms assisting, but dad's champion. And sometimes dads can even be probably in some ways a little more bold about it than maybe moms can get away with. So, because sometimes when you're assisting as a mom, it can come off as, oh, he's a mama's boy, or she's just a mama's girl. But when a dad does it, it's like, this is my son, this is my daughter, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, the boy, yeah. It's just funny how our culture is. But anyway, so sorry, I don't really need my glasses for all of this. I just need it for scriptures. You guys know this verse. I didn't even need to do this. Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and plans to give you a hope and a future. So dad's champion. They have plans. You still got to give room for them to be individuals, but dads champion their kids. I'm going to give you some of her quotes here because I marked it. So, give me some. You guys have any examples in your own lives of ways that someone has championed you? Like I've given you some just from mine, but it doesn't have to be a biological mom or dad, but somebody who was a spiritual mom and dad to you, or maybe you never thought of them that way before, because we talked about this. Like I didn't even know that term was a term until maybe 10 years ago. But somebody that really helped you and championed you. Anybody have somebody like that in your life? You can give us an example of something? Yes, here. Can I give you this, please?
Can I stick here?
Yes.
So when I was in my 20s, I worked retail, and I worked really hard, a lot of hours, and honestly felt kind of important because I was a manager and all of that. And a father figure in my life, who was my pastor, said to me, Connie, there's more to you, and you could really make a difference in people's lives. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry. He's gone now. You can really make a difference in people's lives if you just take a risk. And so because of that relationship, I had the courage to go to college and go on and get my master's and get into being a counselor. So, yeah.
Mine was actually, I was raised Catholic, and so of course my parents always wanted, my mother more than my father. My father was really open, but my mother was very adamant that I be Catholic all my life and marry Catholic and have good Catholic children. And I became a Christian in a Catholic youth group and had the best priest. He was just wild. We used to go on, do these great trips with him. He was worse than the kids, actually. But I sat down with him one day, and I was going to like 5 different churches when I was in high school because I was a worship leader. I was a worship leader at 2 different Baptist churches, and I was leading the mass, the evening mass at the Catholic church, and I just didn't really feel fulfilled there. And so I sat down with him one day, and he said to me, which my mother has never forgiven him for, Barbara, God is not Catholic. And if God can use you somewhere else and you feel that you are led to go there, you need to go there. Changed my life. Really opened up my mom's perspective because she wound up loving the church that I was a part of. But to have my spiritual, this man who was totally called to the Catholic Church tell me that it was okay for me to leave the Catholic Church if God was going to use me somewhere else was a huge thing. One of the other things when you were talking about champion and you were saying encourage this, do this, do this, but sometimes I have found in life that champion can also mean saying no and sticking with your no. I can remember some of the things that my parents told me no when I would bring friends home, and they knew right up front that those friends were not the friends that I needed to have in my life. And they told me, no, you will not go overnight to this friend's house. No, you will not go on this trip. And I just didn't understand it yet. And yet they were championing who I was and who they saw me be. And who they saw me be was better than who I would have been had I allowed that person to become an influence in my life. So some of the champion is not just what you can do for them, it's what you stop them from doing that would keep them from being the best person that you know they can be.
Yeah, that's super good, because that's so true that's many times as parents, because we, as much as they want our approval, we want their approval. And when we have those moments where our kids are like against us, you have to be the big enough adult to say, well, it's not my job to be your buddy. And kids can rebel, and they can, you could have gone off and snuck off with your friends and do whatever, because you can't control your kids. But you also cannot, for one thing, you're going to stand before God for how you raise your kids. But you can't, you got to tell your kids no. And I believe that the Holy Spirit is so big that the whole time they're doing it, they know. And then years later, they get their brain back, and suddenly you got yours back. It's funny how parents and kids get their brains back at the same time. Such an interesting phenomenon. But, yeah, that's so good. Super good. Yeah. I mean, I've had some times when she gave an example of, I don't know if any of you, maybe Connie, Monica, you guys were here, and Tosh, you guys probably were here too. When Dan McCullum came out here, were you here when Dan, from Vacaville, when Dan came out? We call him Dano. He came out quite a few years ago. We need to have him back. Dano is a spiritual dad to Bethany. And so she gave an example of him, that he just has that, fathering is so in him that he'll meet with people even just for short periods of time, and they'll come back later and say, like, that was really life-changing. And honestly, the weekend that Dano was here with us was it really did that for us in a couple of areas too, where he was, for one thing, Dano's a prophet, and so part of it is he's calling things out in people, but he would sit with us and say, like, one of the things he told us was, he goes, you guys don't know what you're good at. He goes, this one area is like, you're really good at this. I don't think you understand. And you're not pushing into it, but you're really good at this. And then he would say, this is what you're doing in this area. And we were like, nuts, you're right. That is what we're doing in that area. And we took care of it. And it wasn't that we would not call Dano one of our spiritual dads, but it was a real dad moment for us, And here's another thing too, like, Dano's probably only 5 years older than us. He's not dad age for us, but in those areas, he had dad wisdom for us, and even the father's wisdom for us, And I've had that same thing. I've had people who are not really, I wouldn't call them spiritual moms to me, but I've sat down with them I've told you about my conversations with Denise Goulet, and I've just sat down with her. I've had a couple of meals with her that were just really like boom meals, where she's been like, you need to take care of that. Matter of fact, one of the things she told me was, I asked her to come years and years ago, and she said, I'll come, but I'm not going to come till you take care of that. And she said, don't let your husband do it, you do it. She said, you let me know when you take care of that situation, and then I'll come. So that was a real, like, put your big girl panties on, Nance, and go take care of it. And we were new in this church when I had to do that, but she was right. She was right, and she was right for me to do it and not let my husband do it, because I needed to be the one to show this is my authority in this area, So, yeah, it's so true. I mean, spiritual moms and dads tell you the hard things. because they love you deeply, and they love you enough even for you to be mad at them, even as adults, not even just when you're kids, even as adults. So, anybody else? All right. I just want, because we're wrapping this up tonight, I just thought I would give a little time to, if we had just some things that were like, not necessarily from me, but just from the thinking about the study and all that jazz, and the weeks that Yolanda taught, and just thinking like, what were some aha moments that you had about being a spiritual mom? Like, anybody have any light bulbs go off where you're like, oh, okay, all right. It doesn't have to be with me. It doesn't even have to be while you're in here. It could be while you're out just thinking about it during the week. Anybody, well, think about that for a minute, and let me ask this. How many of you feel super good about being a spiritual mom? Like, you're like, yeah, I love this. Good, yeah. Good. Anybody else? Yeah, you like this. Anybody half terrified of it? Shelby, I was with you. I'm still half with you half the time, seriously. My thing is, I'm like, I don't want to jack anybody up. I'm like, well, I can go to Connie after I jack them up. It'll be okay. But honestly, I mean, half that is actually true, and then half, I mean, I'm glad to tell somebody that, just to say, like, listen, I'm human. Like, I could tell you something one day, thinking that's what I really think, and then go home and realize, nuts, I was mad about something else, and then I said that, and I had nothing to do with them. Do you know what I mean? But I think as long as you own that, I think people are more than willing to work with humans if you'll just admit that's what you are, So the rest of you, do you just not care? You're going to opt out, or? Here. For a lot of us, we've been doing this for a lot of years, so didn't happen this study.
It was when you were talking about when somebody's anxious about making a mistake or about not getting it right. And Kylie can have a lot of anxiety about doing things right. And so I kind of shot a prayer up saying, Lord, I need to see, where I contributed to that. And I immediately heard back, she saw you afraid of not getting it right. And so it was one of those things she caught more than was taught, and I didn't even realize she was catching it. But I think, as I think about that, because we spent today together and I saw some anxiety in her, and I'm going, wow, she's really anxious about some of this stuff. But the thing is, she pushes through it, and she overcomes it. And so even in those moments, even when I look back and I say, yeah, I could have done that better if I'd only known or seen, she's on the journey now for herself, and she's overcoming stuff. So, yeah.
Are you passing or are you talking? Passing, okay. I think something kind of funny on the other side of that, I still don't know whether this was, I'm being honest, I don't know whether this was a good idea or a bad idea. I think I did it with the best of intentions. So I think it might have been a good idea, but maybe not. But because I worried, because I didn't want my kids to feel like they didn't do well enough or wouldn't do well enough, I would back off. If they showed an interest in something, I would back off of it. Now, I can't do it with worship because we need to do worship here, but like other things, I would back off and intentionally not do it because I wanted to be able to brag on my kids and go, look how awesome that is. I did never do it seriously. I just, watch things, learn things. But I used to, for fun, I used to decorate cakes. I used to like to do it. And then when one of my daughters showed an interest in it, I totally quit. Because I didn't want her comparing her stuff to my stuff when she was starting. And so I just quit. I haven't done one since. I don't. So it's probably not the best. And she got quite good at it. So I didn't need to worry about it. But I just like, I think about things like that. Like things I used to do. I used to be super arts and craftsy, super, and I don't. I just backed off everything because I wanted to be able to celebrate what they were doing, and so I just quit. I know. So that's what I mean. I mean, it probably wasn't the best plan, and and they're not going to watch tonight either. So they don't know that was a course I took. I mean, I don't mean a decorating course. That was a path I took that I just backed off. I just didn't want them to ever feel like they had to compete with me. So I just acted like I didn't do it. And I just backed off. So, but yeah, it probably would have been better to have them, like we celebrate everybody, right? Yeah, yeah. So, I don't know, weird ways we swing the pendulum too far the other way. Yeah. So, anybody else? Yeah. Can I give you this, please?
I think just through this whole thing, I've reflected on the village that God brought into my world because I didn't have consistent parenting. And so the Lord has brought so many different people into my life on my journey that I picked up a little bit of this from this one and a little bit of that from that one. And I am not like my mom at all. I'm a little bit like my grandma, or I borrowed this from my prayer mom Lois because I love the way she has such a heart for God. And so it's, everybody's story is unique. And on the flip side, being a spiritual mom, the girls that the Lord has brought into my life have been like our aides. And I never realized it until a couple of them, I just felt the Lord saying, ask him if you can pray for them. Ask him if you could do this or that. And it was kind of a weird line for me because they were there professionally to help with Matthew. But I have had so many of them come and they need that mothering. And it's not something that I ever saw myself doing, but it's just unfolded. And so it's a beautiful thing for the season that they're in our lives because aides come and go, So it's kind of a cool thing that I don't have to be totally responsible, like you said, worry about failing in a certain area and just stepping up where God asks me to be their friend, or where they ask for advice in this area or that area. But I have made some really great bonds with a lot of Matthew's aides. And so it's been an interesting journey just to see all the people who fed me and all the different people God's brought into my life that just for a season, I feed them this or that.
Monica? And when Monica said that, it just reminded me, when you talk about being a spiritual mother, I don't have my children. I lost my daughter. And yet I looked through my whole life and God blessed me to be a mother to so many people. Even when I was in high school and I was a guitar teacher. And I can remember I taught little kids because I was teaching beginning and intermediate guitar. And this little girl came in one day and she said, I really want you to come to my birthday party. And I would talk to her about everything. I'd talk to her about God because I was like this Jesus person back then. And I would teach her to play, but I would teach her worship songs sometimes. And I said, well, Daphne, you've got to have all your own friends there. Well, no, you're like the best friend that I have. Broke my heart, and yet just realized what an influence you can have on people. When you talk about spiritual moms and you think, but how can I be a spiritual mom? I'm not. You can be a spiritual mom just in your job, just in the work that you do, in touching lives. To have this little girl tell me that here I was like a best friend. And years later, she kept in touch with me when she got through high school and she was in a beauty pageant and she wanted me to come. She goes, you're like my second mom. I want you there. Never thought that. Here I am teaching this little kid how to play guitar, Spiritual moms come in all forms, all sizes. You can be a teenager and be a spiritual mom to somebody. Here I was, just in high school, and I became a spiritual mom to her through the years. So don't think that your age limits when or how you become a spiritual mom to somebody.
Yeah, I got one. Go for it. Okay. So, sometimes I'm good at this, sometimes I'm bad at it. Um, when I was 15, I had this woman who was actually only like 22, and I thought she was, a lot older and a lot wiser. And, when you're 15, you think 22 is like, an adult. And she really was, though. She's the one that led me to God, led me to Jesus, took me to church. The only church I'd been to was an LDS church, and I hadn't been to any other kind of church. I didn't even know that what they were. I didn't understand. And she took so much time with me and explained things to me so well. And she was only 22, and I thought I was an adult, really, when I was 15. I mean, I smoked cigarettes, and I thought I was so cool. And, she accepted me no matter what. She did. Like, when I had been around church people, they were always so judgmental, and, it felt that way, like, oh, you're smoking, and she just accepted me the way I was. And so did you guys. When I came here, I was just me, and I'm always just kind of been me, I'm gonna cry. And I've always just been who I am, and you guys have loved me until I believe that God loves me, and then I can learn to love myself, and all that jazz. So. But she had a big impact on me. That her name was Cheryl, and I have no idea what her last name was, and I want to see her before I die. I want to see her and tell her thank you, because I don't know her last name. I don't know. It was in Minnesota. That's all I know. Mm-hmm. It was one summer when I was out in Minnesota. No. Yeah, I was staying with my dad.
No, I was thinking this, and then it actually is a perfect segue into what I was going to say. Yeah. I don't know if everyone knows, but my husband and I were youth pastors for about 6 years, and we started when I was really a child. I was like 19 years old, and I was a youth pastor to students that were almost the same age as me, and it was a really, talking about being a spiritual mother, and I'm afraid to be a spiritual mother to someone now, but then I'm reflecting and I'm like, no, but I had a lot of impact on those girls that we knew for those 6 years. And although maybe I didn't get to see in that time, them grow and learn to love the Lord like I would have hoped I got to see, I know that I've planted seeds, and I can only hope that, someone else will too along the way and step in and be their spiritual mother in other ways. And maybe I'll get to see it, and maybe I won't. And maybe one day they'll be like, man, Shelby was the first one that ever, not to toot my own horn, but that's just kind of where I've been reflecting and realizing that, again, I know we've also talked about the commitment of being a spiritual mom can seem daunting, but it doesn't, that was such a short time of my life, and now I don't even talk to them anymore. But I would if they ever came back and wanted to, but I don't know, I guess just trusting that that time was that time for a reason, and I planted what I did at that time, and I don't know, I guess we'll just see what happens after that, but.
Yeah, it's so true, and all of it reinforced it, that it's like Monica said, it really does, it takes a village, and you get different things from different people, and I think about the people who've really impacted my life, and they're just in so many ways so different, I don't get the same, Carolyn Connor is not spurring me on in the same way that Denise Goulet is spurring me on, in the same way that Benny Johnson spurs me on. They're completely, all three of those are completely different personalities. But you glean from them what the Lord has from you, and it can even be seasonally. It can go personality-wise, it can go seasonally, it can, and it's so true. It's so what all of you have mentioned lastly is just say yes when you wake up in the morning, and just say yes to whatever way God uses you that way, and don't overthink it. Sometimes we just, we overthink things, and then we throw terms out there. I appreciate the term, I really do, because I do recognize people that have had that impact in my life, so I appreciate the term spiritual mom. But we get terms thrown out there, and we get titles thrown out there, and even like fivefold titles and this and that, and it's like, just live your life functioning. Don't worry about what your title is. Do you know what I mean? Because, God is so big that if God needed you to act as a teacher one day and a mother the next day, and if he needed you to be prophetic the next day, do you know what I mean? Like, it's the same Spirit that gives all gifts liberally, right? So I've really made a conscious, I don't know how much it's changed my life. Maybe God is letting me wade into water. But I've really made a conscious effort lately to tell the Lord, I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes. Because for a long time, I said, yes, but can we wait until my kids are grown? Yes, but can we, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to tell you no, but can you go by my priorities? And so I've really made a conscious effort lately to just try to say yes in the morning, and say, whether I like it or don't like it, or whether it thrills me or bores me, or whether it invigorates me or terrifies me. Yeah, and it's a real, it has to be a conscious effort for me. And because I don't think it's a matter of, I don't think we consciously, so many times, we don't consciously rebel, but we just justify and make excuses that seem perfectly logical and acceptable to us. And God's like, I ask you to do something. So just, I would just say, don't overthink it. I love when God, he told the disciples, don't worry about what you're going to say. When you go in, and they were on trial for their lives, and he said, don't worry about what you're going to say. Just go in. I'll tell you what to say. Such a huge moment. And he was like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I gotcha. And so I think we just, as women, living our lives like that, and even that example of just, like, for others to look at us and go, she just kind of walks in peace, and she says yes, and doesn't mean that nothing terrifies her, but she just does it. What's the phrase? Do it afraid. Just do it afraid, yeah. And what's that one I saw on a poster one time? Speak the truth even if your voice trembles. I love that one. It wasn't the right color for my house, or I would have bought it. But I know it wouldn't go in my living room. But yeah. So I just challenge you with that. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. It's going to look different for all of us and in different ways. And that's the celebration of the creativity and the diversity of God. So, any other comments? I don't even know what time it is at all. Yeah. No, you're good. My thighs need it. As I eat donuts, I think I'm good.
As you were talking about just saying yes, I felt like, for me, I want to say yes to being a spiritual mom, but also to being parented in the Spirit. I want to say yes more quickly to being seen as a daughter and responding as a daughter, because I feel like, at least part of the reason is I feel like it really is meant to be a continual thing, that spiritual mothers are mothered, and that's where they get what they give. And so I just felt like I just wanted to say out loud, I'm saying yes to mothering and being mothered. So.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good. Yeah, I just feel like I've always thought, since we've been here, 19 years? 19 years. And as daunting as what I felt like the call was when we first came here, for me, I've realized, like, just, powerful women don't have to look like, oh! It's not Wonder Woman. It's just women that walk knowing who they are, and they just walk in peace, and they know who they are, and they say yes. And I mean, can you imagine how different our daughters would be, and our spiritual daughters and sons and our friends, if they could just see that example and see it lived out, of just, what is the verse that says, in quietness and confidence will be her strength? And I'm not a terribly quiet person, but I think that's about your spirit. In quietness and confidence will be her strength. And so, yeah. So I celebrate you guys. I love the diversity that we have here, and I love the gifting and everybody. Some of y'all are shy about your gifting, and you're not letting it all show yet, but we're going to pull it out of you. So it's God's given us a great gift in the just the creativity that He's shown in the people that we have, and so I celebrate you guys. Anything else? Yeah.
We've been talking about spiritual moms being them and having someone be them for us, but I find so much value and beauty in the sistership. That's not hard. Mothering has a responsibility tied to it, but there's this huge friendship in the body of Christ and women that I absolutely just love and grow in, and love to see other women see what it looks like when women of God can celebrate each other instead of tear each other down, because women have the ability to be fantastic and terrible. And so when I worked at the PCC for a while and we all prayed together, there was a bond of sistership that was just awesome and incredible amongst those women, because we prayed together and our heart was in the right spot to encourage each other and see each other's gifts and talents and celebrate them, even if it wasn't, something that was for us. But women can be so catty, and they can also be so awesome. But sistership is so beautiful. It's just another facet of that nurturing spirit inside of a woman, I think.
All right, cool. We will wrap this up. Okay, so I am torn. I'm torn whether to do a study on Romans next. I think that's what I'm leaning toward. But I have a couple of other things I'm like, I wonder if I should do that first. Anyway, I'm probably going to lean toward Romans next, but we'll see. And then, of course, we're rolling into holidays and stuff like that pretty soon. So we'll see how all that goes. But anyway. Huh? Yeah, give me an opinion. Okay. Well, I mean, Romans is not that long even anyway. So, yeah. I went through Romans just on my own time a while back, and I was like, wow, I would love to do a study on this. And then it's been a while, but yeah, so since I did it, but I'd love, yeah. So that's what I'm leaning toward. But again, you guys, it's the holidays. We may be taking some holidicious breaks and doing some other things. I'm thinking about, yeah, I'll have to think about this. I'm thinking about having a Christmas cookie party at my house. But if you could see my house right now, you'd be like, okay, well, we'll see how that goes. Because we're redecorating. Oh, yay, thank you. Oh, do you want to? I don't want to get it dirty. Are we holding it up? Holding it out? What are we doing? Aw. Okay, cool. I'm going to move this. I haven't seen it. I am not tall. They could, you know what? They could stand on this first step, though. Or they could stand on the chairs. With whatever works. Do you want them to, should they stand on the chairs? You better, maybe. Or you could stand on the top of this and let it drape a little bit. Do you want to stop? Do you want to stand on the top of this and let it drape? Stand on the stairs and let it drape a little bit. Aw.